Dahlia Brooks stood outside the glass tower of Fairfield and Knox Capital, heart pounding, hands cold despite the Los Angeles heat, whispering to herself, "I'm going to destroy him." It had been 3 years since her father lost everything: his company, his health, and eventually his life. And it all traced back to one man, Holden Fairfield, the millionaire investor who had pulled out of her father's startup days before launch, crashing the company's value and dragging their family into ruin. Dahlia had spent every day since planning this moment. Her resume, her alias, her new last name, every part of her life had been rebuilt for this one purpose: revenge. She adjusted her blazer, smoothed her skirt, and walked through the revolving doors. The receptionist greeted her with a polished smile. "You're here for the executive assistant interview?" "Yes," Dahlia replied with practiced calm. "Dahlia Brooks. I have a 10 o'clock with Mr. Fairfield." The elevator ride to the top floor was silent except for the quiet hum of nerves and ambition in her chest. When the door slid open, she stepped into a sleek, open office filled with floor-to-ceiling windows, designer furniture, and the low buzz of productivity. It reeked of wealth. "Miss Brooks," came a deep voice behind her. She turned. Holden Fairfield had no right to look that good. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark coffee-colored eyes and a neatly cropped beard, he stood in a navy suit that probably cost more than her entire education. He didn't look like a man who ruined lives. He looked like a man who owned the world. "Right this way," he said with a nod. She followed him into his office, a modern, glass-walled corner suite overlooking downtown. He gestured for her to sit. "Tell me about yourself," he said, leaning back in his chair. Dahlia kept her expression neutral. "I've worked in several administrative roles, mostly in fast-paced environments. I'm organized, discreet, and comfortable managing schedules, travel, and communication for high-level executives." He studied her. "Why Fairfield and Knox?" "Because I want to burn your empire to the ground." Instead, she smiled. "I've heard you lead with vision. I want to be part of something that's shaping the future." Holden's eyes didn't leave hers. "You're sharp. I like that." He stood, walked around to her side of the desk, and handed her a leather-bound planner. "We move fast here. If you can keep up, the job's yours." Her fingers brushed his as she took it. "I can." He smiled genuinely. "Then welcome to hell, Miss Brooks." The next month flew by. Dahlia embedded herself like a splinter beneath his skin, always there, always smiling, always efficient. She moved meetings, fixed deals, anticipated problems before they happened. She wanted to be indispensable. She had to be. But Holden wasn't the man she expected. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't careless. He never barked orders or made her feel small. Instead, he thanked her. He asked about her day. He brought her coffee, the morning she had a migraine. He once canceled a meeting because she looked exhausted and told her, "You're not a machine, Dahlia. Don't forget that." She kept waiting for the mask to drop. It didn't. One evening, while past working hours, Holden poked his head into her corner office. "Hungry?" She looked up from her laptop. "I'm fine, come on," he said. "I'm starving and I hate eating alone." She hesitated. This wasn't part of the plan. Dinner wasn't part of the plan. But her stomach growled, and so did something else: curiosity. He took her to a rooftop restaurant in Beverly Hills. The kind with fairy lights, a string quartet, and a view that made your problems feel far away. She wore the same pencil skirt and blouse from the office, but he looked at her like she was wearing a ball gown. "You don't bring all your assistants here, do you?" she asked, teasing. "Just the ones who saved me from 3 merger disasters in a week," he said, lifting a glass of wine. She laughed. "That's a pretty low bar." "I don't think so," he said quietly, studying her. "You're different." She swallowed hard. "I don't think you know me well enough to say that." "You're right," he said, setting the glass down. "But I want to." Her chest tightened. She shouldn't feel like this. Not with him. Not with the man who destroyed her family. You're not what I expected, she admitted, instantly regretting it. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I haven't decided yet, she said. He leaned closer. Let me help you decide. His hand brushed hers. Her breath caught. No. No. She couldn't fall for him. This was the enemy. This was the man she came to crush. But somehow, in the golden glow of rooftop lights and the warmth of his gaze, Dahlia felt herself slipping. Later that week, she found herself in the records room, digging through old investment files. She needed proof. Something to link Holden directly to the collapse of her father's company. A clause, an email, something. She found it. A withdrawal form for Whitmore Tech, her father's company, signed not by Holden, but by his former partner, Knox Whitmore. And attached was a memo from Holden advising against the withdrawal. She stared at it. Read it again. And again. He hadn't ruined her father. He'd tried to stop it. Her stomach flipped. Everything she believed was wrong. She didn't hear him come in. Dahlia? His voice was soft. You okay? She turned, the file still in her hand. He looked concerned. What is that? She held it out. Her voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? Holden took it, read it, then looked at her. Because I didn't know you were looking. Her throat tightened. I came here to ruin you. He blinked. What? She stepped back, her heart racing. My father, Benjamin Brooks, started Whitmore Tech. When you pulled funding, he lost everything. I thought it was you. I thought you. Holden's face changed, shock, then realization, then something else. Dahlia. I'm sorry, she said, suddenly breathless. I didn't know. I didn't know Knox was. He walked to her, gently took the file from her shaking hands, and set it down. I'm not angry, he said quietly. You should be. No, he said. Because now I finally understand why you were always holding back. She looked up at him, tears pooling. Everything I thought about you was wrong, he said, stepping closer. And now we have a choice. A choice. He nodded. We can walk away from this. Or we can start again. No lies. Just us. Her heart beat so loud, she could barely hear the silence. And what if I want to choose you? She whispered. But I'm scared. He touched her hand. Then let me make it easy. You never flinch, Holden said as the town car wound its way through the winding cliffside road overlooking the Pacific. I've seen people fold under half the pressure I throw at them. Dahlia kept her eyes on the ocean, trying to quiet the chaos inside her. That's not a compliment if you're the one applying the pressure. I mean it is one, he said, voice lower this time. You're unshakable. Even when you're furious. She turned to him, the salt air whipping through her hair now that they'd cracked the windows. You think I'm furious? I think you were, he said. Now? I think you're just trying to decide whether you can stand being in a car with me. She didn't answer. She didn't trust herself to. He leaned forward and knocked on the glass, separating them from the driver. Take the long route. The car eased toward a quieter road flanked by wildflowers and cypress trees. The sun had begun to dip, painting the sky with streaks of molten gold and violet. She hated how easily beauty softened her, especially when he was part of the view. Dahlia crossed her arms. Did you know what Knox was planning? No, Holden said instantly. I was out of the country when he made the decision. I came home to the fallout. But you stayed partners. For a while. I tried to fix it. He didn't want it fixed. I bought him out last year. She studied him. Why didn't you say anything about my father when I told you my name? Because Brooks is common, he said. And I wasn't sure if you were his daughter. And even if you were, I didn't want to drag up something you might have left behind. I didn't, she said softly. I carried it with me. Holden looked ahead, jaw set. I wish I'd found you first. Before all that. She turned away, emotion rising too fast. You didn't. They rode in silence until the car slowed before the gates of a sprawling villa nestled into the cliffside. Ivy blanketed the stone walls, and the front terrace opened directly toward the sea. The kind of estate that didn't feel real unless you'd been born into wealth or built it from ash. "We're not going back to the office?" she asked. "I had a board dinner scheduled out here," he said. "Cancelled it." She frowned. "Why?" "I didn't want to spend tonight with people who only know how to talk about quarterly earnings and yacht club expansions." The gate opened, and she stepped out into a breeze that carried jasmine and salt. Her heels clicked against the stone as she followed him into the villa. The interior was all open spaces, vaulted ceilings, and floor-to-ceiling windows that opened out toward the water. Not opulent. Intentional. "You live here?" she asked, surprised by the warmth of it. "No," he said. "But I come here when I need to think." She hovered near the kitchen island as he moved to a paneled fridge and pulled out a bottle of champagne already chilled. He poured her a glass without asking. "I don't usually drink," she said. "I know. You never touch the wine at work events. But I thought tonight might be an exception." She took the glass and sipped. "You pay attention. You make it easy." Dahlia set the glass down, her pulse fluttering. "I should go." "You could," he said, folding his arms across his chest. "Or you could tell me what you want now. Now that revenge isn't a real option." She stared at him, eyes narrowing. "You think I only came here for revenge? I think you came here to find answers. And now that you have them, I want to know what happens next." She stepped away from the island, walking toward the open doors that led to the terrace. The ocean roared below like it wanted to be part of the conversation. "I don't know," she said. "I'd spent so long blaming you. I didn't leave room for what if I was wrong." He followed her out. "You weren't wrong to feel what you felt. You lost your father. That doesn't go away just because I wasn't holding the knife." She turned to him. "But I wanted you to pay. I wanted to ruin you." "You could have tried," he said. "But something stopped you." She looked away. "You weren't supposed to be kind. I've had worse things said about me. I'm serious." "So am I." His voice softened. "Do you think I don't see how hard you work to not let anyone close? You've been building walls since the day you walked into my office. But every time I offered something real space, trust, time, you didn't shut the door. Not completely." She clenched her hands. "I didn't know how." He stepped closer. "You still don't. But that doesn't scare me." Her eyes lifted to meet his. "Why?" "Because I've been alone long enough to recognize someone who doesn't want to be." She shook her head. "This isn't how stories like this end. There's supposed to be consequences." "There are," he said. "You're still hurting." "I'm still trying to fix something that can't be undone. But maybe the consequence is learning how to move forward with someone who sees all of you and stays anyway." Dahlia's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know how to trust you." "Then don't trust me yet," he said. "Just stay." She didn't answer. Instead, she turned back to the view, her thoughts tangled. He didn't push. He just stood beside her, hands in his pockets, the wind catching his jacket. After a long minute, she broke the silence. "If I stay," she said slowly, "I don't want to pretend." "No pretending," he said. "I don't want to be your assistant." "You're not," he said, voice low. "Not anymore." She exhaled. "Then what am I to you?" He looked at her then, really looked, and something in his face shifted. "You're the only thing I haven't been able to control since you walked through my door." Her chest ached at that. "That's not an answer." "It's the truth," he said. "But if you want something more specific." She waited. "You're the first person who's made me want to stop running from everything I built." That hit harder than she could have prepared for. She turned to him, heart in her throat. "I need time." He nodded. "Take it. I don't want to go back to the office." "You won't. And I don't want you to buy me things." I won't. And I don't want to be another woman you forget once the shine wears off. He stepped forward. You are unforgettable. The space between them disappeared. Her breath caught as his hand brushed her jaw, tentative, waiting. And when she didn't pull away, he kissed her. Not like a man claiming something, like a man asking for it. And despite everything, her plan, her pain, her past, she kissed him back. Because she wanted to know what came after the fall. The first time Dahlia stayed overnight at the villa, she didn't plan to. It was nearly midnight, the tide crashing against the cliffs below with a rhythm that lulled her into forgetting the rest of the world. She stood barefoot in the kitchen, holding a glass of water, when Holden appeared in the doorway, still wearing his dress shirt, sleeves rolled up, top button undone. There were creases at his elbows and a tiredness in his eyes that hadn't been there earlier. You should sleep, she said, avoiding his gaze. I will, he replied, leaning against the frame. But I didn't want to go to bed without knowing if you were staying, because you wanted to. Or because you didn't know how to say no. Dahlia set her glass down without answering. She walked past him, not bothering to explain, and made her way down the hallway that led to the guest room he'd shown her earlier. Her hand paused at the door, then dropped. She turned to find him still watching her. I'm staying, she said. But not because I owe you anything. You don't, he said softly. And you never did. That night, she didn't close the door all the way. And in the quiet hours before dawn, she heard his footsteps pass by once, then fade. He hadn't come in. He hadn't needed to. By morning, the air had shifted. Holden stood outside on the terrace, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in clipped tones she hadn't heard before. Dahlia lingered just out of view, watching the way his posture stiffened as he listened.
No.
I said I'd handle it, and I will, he said, voice cool. But if Knox thinks he can use this to force his way back in, he's lost his mind. She stepped forward. He turned, face unreadable, and lowered the phone. Everything okay? She asked. He hesitated. That depends. Do you want the polished answer or the real one? The real one. Knox is threatening to sue me for breach of our exit agreement. He claims I withheld assets during the buyout. Did you?
No, he said.
But that's never stopped him before. Dahlia crossed her arms. What does he actually want? To be relevant again? Or maybe just to hurt me? She tilted her head. Do you think he knows about us? Holden exhaled.
He knows you work for me.
That might be enough. She didn't flinch, then let him come. He looked at her, something flickering in his expression. I should have told you sooner. I didn't want to drag you into this. You didn't drag me anywhere, she said. I walked in with both eyes open. A pause stretched between them before he stepped closer. If this escalates, it'll get ugly. Knox doesn't care who he burns. I'm not afraid of him. You should be, Holden said. He's not like me. She didn't look away. I know. Later that afternoon, Dahlia returned to her apartment for the first time in days. The space felt smaller than she remembered, like it had shrunk while she was gone. She dropped her overnight bag, moved to the kitchen, and opened the fridge out of habit. Empty shelves stared back at her. She closed it and leaned against the counter. There were no pictures on the walls. No plants. No signs of permanence. She had spent so long building a life that could vanish in an instant. She'd forgotten how to make space for anything that stayed. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thought you'd want to know Knox is digging. There was no name, but she didn't need one. She'd spent enough time in the industry to recognize the signs. Someone from legal, probably. A quiet warning. She turned the screen off without replying. That evening, Holden sent a town car for her. She hadn't asked him to. He didn't mention it beforehand. But the moment the driver appeared at her curb, she stepped in without hesitation. Inside the villa, he was waiting by the fireplace, a stack of documents on the table beside him. His tie was gone, his sleeves rolled up again. The fire cast shadows along the edges of his face. Are you sure you want to be in the middle of this? He asked. You already asked me that, she said, sitting down across from him. I mean it in a different way this time. Then ask it differently. He leaned forward. If Knox finds out the truth about your father and the connection to Whitmore Tech, he'll use it.
He'll paint you as a spy.
Say you seduced me to gain access to confidential files. Then let him say it, she replied. He'd be half right. I did come here with an agenda. But I stayed because of you. Holden's jaw tightened. You shouldn't have to defend yourself from something you've already owned. I'm not ashamed of what I felt, just of how long I held on to it. He watched her, the firelight flickering in his eyes. There's a way to shut this down.
How?
Publicly, he said. You and me. Together. At the gala next week. It's the largest event we host all year. If we attend as a couple, it'll send a message. She raised an eyebrow. You want to make us official? To hurt Knox?
No, he said.
I want to make us official because I'm tired of pretending you're just someone who works for me. But if it rattles him too, I won't lose sleep over it. Dahlia gave a quiet laugh. You're serious?
Deadly.
She rose from her seat and walked to the window, arms folded. I don't own a dress for something like that. I already took care of it. It's hanging upstairs. She turned slowly. You bought me a dress? I had it designed, he said. Weeks ago. Her breath caught. Why? Because I hoped you'd give me a reason to see you in it. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, if I agree to this, there's no hiding anymore. I don't want to hide, he said. I want to be seen with you. She stepped toward him, the fire throwing gold across her skin. Then you'd better be ready. Because the moment we walk into that room together, everything changes. Holden rose to his feet. Let it change. When she kissed him this time, it wasn't tentative. It wasn't careful. It was a promise. And in the quiet that followed, neither of them said what they both knew. The past didn't vanish just because you stopped looking over your shoulder. But sometimes, if you were brave enough, you could face it walking side by side. The gala unfolded like a dream sharpened by danger. Held in the glass atrium of the Kingman Arts Pavilion, it shimmered with candlelight and 100 murmurs of wealth. Strings of silver orchids hung from the ceiling like falling stars. Outside, the press swarmed behind velvet ropes, the hum of camera shutters like a distant storm. Inside, the crowd parted as Holden and Dahlia entered, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, her chin lifted with quiet defiance. She wore the dress he'd commissioned, black silk that clung like moonlight to her skin. It wasn't revealing. It didn't need to be. It commanded. Holden leaned in. Still breathing? Barely, she murmured. But I'm upright. Then we're already winning. They moved through the room slowly, deliberately. Every glance, every whisper, every tightening of a jaw from one of Holden's competitors was exactly what he wanted. But Dahlia wasn't thinking about them. Her eyes scanned for one man.
She didn't wait long.
Knox Whitmore emerged near the central sculpture, a drink in hand and a woman half his age draped on his arm. His features were sharper than she remembered from the news article's smaller eyes, slicked back hair, a mouth that twitched when he spotted them. Well, Knox drawled, stepping into their path. This is unexpected. Not for us, Holden said, tone flat. Knox gave Dahlia a slow once-over. You've traded up from assistance, I see. Careful, she said coolly. You're leaking bitterness. Knox's lip twitched again. You must be Dahlia Brooks. Heard you've been busy. Holden stepped forward. You've said what you came to say. Now walk away. But I haven't congratulated you yet, Knox said, lifting his glass mockingly. For finally finding someone just as calculating as you are. Holden didn't blink. You've always confused calculation with clarity. Maybe that's why everything you touch implodes. Knox's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. You think this changes anything? You think a woman on your arm erases what she came here to do? Dahlia stepped in.
No.
But it reveals what you're still doing, digging up what you destroyed, because you can't stand being irrelevant. Knox's voice dropped. You want to talk irrelevance, sweetheart? Let's talk about your father. Holden's hand closed around Knox's wrist before the sentence could finish. You don't say his name, Holden said, voice low and lethal. Not in front of her. Not ever again. Knox stared at him, then slowly pulled his arm back and laughed. You really fell for her. Get out, Holden said. Knox met Dahlia's eyes once more. Careful where you plant your roots. This empire's built on sand. He walked away, leaving behind a silence that tasted like steel. Holden turned to her. Are you all right? She nodded once. I've never been more sure of anything. The next morning, Holden's legal team confirmed what they'd suspected. Knox had no legitimate claim. His threat was smoke. But it didn't matter anymore. The truth had already been set loose in the one place it mattered, in the rooms where reputations were currency. Holden stood at the edge of the villa's deck, barefoot, coffee untouched in his hand. Dahlia joined him, her voice soft. You're quiet. I keep thinking about how close I came to losing control of everything I built.
You didn't, she said.
You just rebuilt better. He looked at her. You're part of that now. You say that like there's still a choice.
There isn't, he said.
Not for me. She leaned on the rail beside him. You know, I keep waiting for the moment I regret this. And I think I already passed it. Somewhere between the rooftop and the dress. His eyes softened. I didn't fall in love with you because you changed your mind. I fell because you were brave enough to admit you did. Her breath caught. You've never said it like that before. I've never felt it like this before. He set the coffee down and reached into his back pocket. She didn't notice until he was already turning toward her, a small velvet box in his hand. Dahlia blinked. You're not. I am, he said. Holden, there's no correct timing. There's no perfect moment. But there is this. I love you. And I want to spend my life proving that what started in revenge can end in something stronger. Something permanent. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. He knelt, holding the box open. I don't want you to go back to your apartment. I don't want you to be my assistant. I want you to be my partner. My wife. Say yes. She dropped to her knees too, tears catching in her throat. You're insane. I know. And I'm still furious that I ever hated you. I deserve that. And I'm terrified. So am I. She wrapped her arms around his neck and pressed her forehead to his. Yes. The wedding was quiet. Not secret, just sacred. Held on the cliffs behind the villa, with only a handful of people in attendance, it was the opposite of the gala intimate, stripped of spectacle. Dahlia wore white linen and no shoes. Holden wore a tailored suit without a tie. They wrote their own vows, and when he held her hand, there was no one who didn't believe them. Later, as the sun dipped and the sea turned silver, they sat on the porch with glasses of wine and no more battles left to fight. I don't know what to do now, she said lightly, curling her legs beneath her. I've spent so long running on rage. Holden leaned back in his chair, watching her with the same quiet awe he always did when he thought she didn't notice. Then maybe it's time to build something different. Like what? He reached for her hand and kissed the inside of her wrist. Like a life. Just like that? Not just like that, he said. But with you, yes. She leaned her head on his shoulder, the horizon wide and waiting. Dahlia Brooks had come to ruin a millionaire. Instead, she'd found a man who taught her that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is offer someone your heart and hope they're gentle enough to hold it. Holden Fairfield hadn't needed saving, but he'd been waiting all along for someone who would see beyond the empire and love the man who built it. Rain pattered gently against the villa's windows, a rare spring storm rolling in off the Pacific. The ocean, usually calm at this hour, tossed in restless waves beneath a gray sky that made the cliffs look sharper, the world quieter. Dahlia stood in the sunroom barefoot, her hands wrapped around a cup of chamomile tea. She wore one of Holden's button-down shirts, the sleeves rolled high, the hem brushing her thighs. The room was filled with the scent of sea air and lemonwood. Holden walked in, still damp from his run, towel around his neck, hair tousled. His gaze moved to her instantly. "You didn't sleep," he said, drying his hands with the towel. "I can tell." Dahlia set her tea down. "I kept thinking about the foundation. The one you mentioned last week? I've been doing research," she said, crossing to the table where her laptop sat open. "There's a gap in funding for small tech startups led by underrepresented founders. My dad's company would have qualified if something like this had existed back then." Holden dropped the towel over a chair and leaned beside her. "You want to create a fund? I want to make sure no one gets shut out because they don't speak the right language or know the right people. I want to name it after him." His jaw worked once, and then he nodded. "Let's do it. I don't want it to be a vanity project." "It won't be. You'll run it. I'll fund it." She tilted her head. "You're not going to argue?"
No.
"Because I know this isn't about making a statement. It's about making something right." She rested her palm on his chest. "I thought you might think I was chasing ghosts."
We all are in some way, he said.
"But you're turning yours into something solid. That's not haunting. That's healing." Later that week, they flew to New York for the official launch of Fairfield Brooks Ventures. The event was held at a private gallery in Tribeca, surrounded by clean lines, abstract art, and a small crowd of founders, press, and allies. Dahlia wore a deep emerald dress, her hair pulled back to reveal the delicate gold earrings Holden had given her that morning. No diamonds, no flash, just a quiet symbol of something earned. During her speech, she didn't read from notes. Instead, she told a story. "My father believed in people more than products. He thought if someone had a good idea and the heart to fight for it, that should be enough. But it wasn't. Not then. Not for him. This fund exists so that someone else doesn't have to lose everything before being seen." When she stepped down, Holden didn't wait for applause to die. He met her on the edge of the platform, caught her hand, and kissed her forehead in full view of every camera. Afterward, on the terrace of their penthouse suite, Dahlia looked out toward the skyline. "You ever feel like we're standing somewhere we were never meant to be?" she asked. Holden joined her, sliding an arm around her waist.
"No.
"I think we fought to be here. We just took a longer road." She leaned into him. "It doesn't scare you? All of this?" "Only when I think about what it would have been like if I hadn't opened the door that day and found you standing there." She turned to him then, really turned, and her voice dropped lower. "Do you remember the first thing I said to you?" "You mean after you lied about your last name?" he asked, teasing. "I said I wanted to be part of something shaping the future." He smiled. "You were telling the truth." Months passed. The villa became less of a retreat and more of a home. They kept an apartment in the city for business, but the cliffs were where they returned after every deal, every boardroom battle, every gala. Dahlia filled the villa with pieces of herself, books with cracked spines, framed photos from childhood, a record player they used more than the sound system. Holden built a second office beside hers, not because they needed more space, but because he liked being close enough to hear her pacing when she thought. They worked together, but not always on the same thing. They argued, sometimes fiercely, about strategy, about timing, about whether or not a venture fit their mission. But they never shut each other out. Not anymore. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky blushed lavender, Holden found her in the garden behind the villa, kneeling beside a row of new lavender plants. "You're planting again," he said, crouching beside her. "I like starting things," she replied, "watching them grow." He pulled a small envelope from his back pocket. "Then you might like this." She opened it cautiously. Inside was a deed. To what?
she asked, confused.
He pointed toward the small hill that overlooked their property. The land just beyond the ridge. I thought it might be a good place for something new. Her brow furrowed. Like what?
A school, he said.
Or a tech incubator. Or a place where kids can learn how to build things that don't exist yet. Something with your name on it. Dahlia's eyes filled, but she blinked them clear. You keep giving me things I didn't even know I needed. He took her dirt-streaked hand and kissed it. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost. I'm just trying to keep up. That night, they danced barefoot in the kitchen, their steps slow and unhurried, a jazz record playing low in the background. There was no audience.
No cameras.
Just the two of them, moving to a rhythm that belonged only to them. Years later, they stood hand in hand at the opening of the Brooks Future Lab, a sleek, sunlit center built on the land Holden had bought. Children coded robots in one room while teenagers pitched apps in another. Parents watched from the sidelines, hope in their eyes. A reporter asked Dahlia what the most surprising part of her journey had been. She didn't hesitate. Falling in love with the man I thought I came to destroy. And when Holden joined her seconds later, wrapping an arm around her and whispering something that made her laugh, it was clear to everyone watching that this wasn't just a story of revenge undone. It was a story of two people who had faced the worst in each other and still chose to stay. And from that choice came everything else: legacy, love, and a life neither of them had ever dared to imagine.